What is up, Light Fam? Welcome to another video. My name is David, your spiritual awakening coach, here to help you through your spiritual awakening. Now, a topic that is all over the spiritual community right now is that of spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing can be very detrimental to your spiritual growth, Light Fam. And since you guys know that I am here to help you grow spiritually, I really wanted to break down what is spiritual bypassing. What does it look like? And then give you some ways that you can avoid it. Right now, let's go. Spiritual bypassing, in its simplest terms, is trying to avoid facing any painful or uncomfortable emotions or unhealed trauma through forced positivity. Basically, it's saying it's more spiritual to be positive than to acknowledge painful or uncomfortable emotions. Notice I said forced positivity. If you are genuinely positive, then you're good. That means that you've reached a level of spiritual maturity that you're not afraid to face any emotion that is asking for your attention. This is also known as emotional intelligence. However, if you are faking being positive so that you don't have to face the uncomfortability of a particular emotion, that's spiritual bypassing. Not wanting to face is in alignment with fear. So just know that in that moment, you're seeing things through the perspective of the ego. But at its core, spiritual bypassing is just another form of escapism, like any other vice, including the vice of using another person to distract yourself from facing the healing that you need to do. I'm here to tell you that spirituality is all about knowing thyself. Calling an emotion negative is coming from the perspective that that emotion has shown up to punish you or is beneath you because you're so spiritual now. We've got to change the way that we look at these so-called negative emotions. Those negative emotions are a part of you, and to deny them is to deny a part of yourself, which is a subconscious form of self-hate as well as internal division. Sounds an awful lot like the shadow to me. Yes, that methodology is how the shadow gets created. Now consider the fact that you already have a shadow from childhood that houses all the aspects of you that you have repressed, denied, and maybe apprehensive about facing. If you're spiritual bypassing, you're adding to that shadow. Your shadow is getting bigger. After spiritual awakening, your shadow is supposed to get smaller. Like, fam, you're going the wrong direction. Your shadow's getting bigger. Come back. Come back. Let's shrink the shadow by facing it instead of bypassing it. A common mantra in spirituality, as I just mentioned, is know thyself. Well, avoiding emotions stops you from getting to know all aspects of yourself. It stops you from showing yourself that you are way stronger and much more resilient than your ego may have led you to believe. It also stops you from getting the message and the lesson, or unlocking a strength that you never even knew you had if you would have avoided facing that trigger. So anytime you avoid facing a difficult emotion, you are denying the greater, stronger, more consciously evolved aspect of yourself from showing up. Your greatest version is asking for an opportunity to show up through that trigger. Your greatest version is on the bench yelling, "Hey coach, put me in the game, coach." So are you going to keep the current players in the game by following those old behavior patterns of the old identity and repeating the same trauma over and over? Or are you going to take a course of action that is in alignment with the you that loves yourself, that knows your worth, that respects and defends your boundaries, that doesn't seek outside validation and approval, and acts from a place of sovereign freedom? We are denying our greatest version an opportunity to show up and show out when we avoid facing uncomfortable emotions, unhealed trauma, or triggers. These so-called negative emotions come around not to punish you, but to help you get out of alignment with fear. Fear is a frequency that holds the highest level of vibrational dissonance to source. The dominant frequency of source consciousness is love. So you can say that these triggers and challenges show up to give you an opportunity to get out of alignment with fear which is a product of ego, and in alignment with source, which is love. Love is a vibrational match to freedom. We attain our freedom by conquering what we fear, which is why one of my absolute favorite sayings is, on the other side of fear is freedom. So next time you get triggered, ask yourself, where's my opportunity to be free here? In other words, what fear is at the root of this trigger or challenge, that the conquering of which will set me free? As I mentioned earlier, spiritual bypassing is just another form of escapism. Escapism can take many forms that we're not even aware of, because usually when you think of escapism, the first thing that comes to mind is drugs and alcohol. But really, escapism is anything that you use to avoid facing unhealed trauma. It can show up in the form of binge watching Netflix, binging on video games, binging on social media, binging on another person. Now, this is especially true for all of my twin flamers out there who are spiritually bypassing without even knowing it, because they're obsessing over their twin instead of facing their unhealed trauma that the twin was actually called in to get you to heal in the first place. Oh, the Abrahamic religions. Now, they are the kings of bypassing because they indoctrinate their followers to externalize all accountability, good or bad. Something good happens. Oh, you didn't do that. You're not good enough to receive that. No, that's God. You got to give God all the glory. You're nothing. You only got that by the grace of God, which is amazingly healthy for your self-worth and self-confidence, by the way. Anything bad happens. Oh, that's the enemy. Don't look at me. That's the enemy. I didn't do that. The enemy called in this narcissist that's abusing me. No, he didn't actually. It's your unhealed trauma that you won't face because you're blaming the enemy that called in the narcissist that is abusing you. So whether you're pointing your finger up or you're pointing your finger down, you're not pointing your finger here. Here is where all of the change happens. Here is where you face that codependency issue, that abandonment issue, that narcissistic parent issue, that self-love issue, that self-worth issue, whatever your trauma happens to be. Because as long as you're pointing your finger at your imaginary scapegoat instead of here, you will continue to be a prisoner of that vice that you can't kick. Or that same toxic relationship is going to continue to show up. Or you're still going to have self-worth, self-love issues, feeling undeserving of love, or whatever your trauma happens to be, until you take accountability and heal those wounds. Freedom is an internal job, people. It's not an external one. So how do we cure spiritual bypassing? We have to face and accept all emotions in a state of allowing and bravery. Yes, I'm aware that is much easier said than done, but that doesn't make it any less true. So we have to stop fearing the uncomfortable. Instead, come from the perspective of befriending the uncomfortable, normalizing the uncomfortable, which is where your greatest version lies, by the way. Your greatest version lies in the uncomfortable. One of the best training grounds that I can think of for normalizing and befriending the uncomfortable is consistent shadow work. You know I'm going to keep coming around to that, right? Like, fam? But if, you don't have to worry about spiritual bypassing if you're doing consistent shadow work, because you're already conditioned to not make an enemy out of any negative emotions or triggers that pop up. Consistent shadow work also gives you a much deeper knowledge of the workings of the ego. This knowledge of the workings of the ego kind of helps to diffuse a lot of that emotional charge that you may encounter from someone else's negative energy, or even your own self-sabotaging talk, because now you can kind of see through the fear agenda of the ego, which helps you to not take it so personal. We overcome spiritual bypassing by realizing that we are strong enough to face any emotion that comes our way. In fact, it's my belief that you knew what you wanted to learn and experience before you decided to incarnate. Now, this would suggest that those traumas and triggers were preordained by you. And of course, you would know that you would be strong enough to face that unhealed wound, heal it, and learn from and experience your purpose for incarnating. Now, question of the day. What is your most frequent example of spiritual bypassing? If you feel comfortable sharing with the Light Fam, let us know in the comments below. If you need a hand with spiritual bypassing, or you need a hand with shadow work, we can work together one-on-one through Zoom. Check the description below for that. If you have a question for me, add me over on Instagram _Lightways. Until next time, I will see all you guys in the next video. Light, love, and abundance to all that are watching, and to all you love. Peace, guys.